Good afternoon. I'm Peter Song. I'm the interim chair of the department for the next 40 days or so. I will back to my normal days. Thanks for making your time to attend a special Biostat event on Friday afternoon. I'm very pleased to present Professor Baladandayuthapani. Oh, okay, let me try it again. Consultation from Sumic. Try this, okay? Okay. Professor Baladandayuthapani. Let me try my one. Professor Baladandayuthapani. Okay. First, this is the first journey talk of this academic year, 2022 to 2023. We will have another one scheduled. I just keep this as a mysterious sort of thing that you will know in the next couple of weeks who is going to deliver the next one. As you can see that Professor Baladandayuthapani is famous for having the longest last name. And of course, he is more famous for his scholarly accomplishments in Bayesian statistics, especially for his developments of cutting-edge Bayesian method to analyze complex biomedical data with novel applications cancer research. And so now I'd like to ask Marie Masuti to introduce speaker today. And Marie and Veera belongs to the same academic family. So.
Thanks. So I have the honor today of introducing our journey lecturer, my academic grandfather, Dr. Veera Baladandayuthapani. Drop my. I want to start by recognizing that today may be a very dark day for him. If you didn't know, he is a diehard cricket fan, and his beloved team, the India national team, lost yesterday to England in a semi-final World Cup match for the Cricket World Cup. So we're all very sad about that. Everyone be extra careful today. It's very good time. Joking aside, in the short time that I've been here, I have witnessed his devotion to his students, fellow faculty in the department. I'm very, very lucky to sort of have him as a mentor. And he also obviously has a very successful career in biostat. So just some highlights for you. He received his PhD in statistics from Texas A&M in 2005. He joined Michigan as a professor and director of the Cancer Data Science Shared Resource in 2018 after spending 13 years at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. His work has resulted in over 140 papers published in top journals. He wrote a book. He currently holds multiple PI level grants. He and his students have won several prestigious awards for their innovative research. And I won't list them because we don't have all day. And so, yeah, I'm very thankful for his mentorship. Excited to hear what nuggets of wisdom he has for us. And yeah, take it away.
Can you hear me at the back there? Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks.
Also 9.5 on the name. 9.9. No, thank you. That was a very, very generous introduction. Both Peter and Maria. Well, thank you for coming. I don't know if it's me or the samosas and the pakoras, but I'm asking this. It's so nice to see a pretty much packed house here. I might have the longest last name, but I think who beat me to the total characters by one.
Oh. I use different criteria.
Yeah. All right. So Thank you for this. This was actually one of the hardest talk for me to put together. Because it has no equations. Let's see.
We tested this beforehand.
It's a journey that I didn't intend to take. No, it was sort of that might be with many people in this room. It's something I fell backwards into, where I started and where I am currently, and hopefully where I'll end up. So it was not as linear. There are some nonlinearities to this, but now and hopefully for the next few minutes, I'll indulge me in telling my journey and also I won't be for long. All right. So I was thinking long and hard, what is the sufficient statistic and what is the bottom line? And the only thing I could come up with was luck. And as statisticians and in the room, like it's you have to put a probability or a likelihood to it. I just Googled it and I found that that's those terms associated with it. And I'll explain, what were the lucky points, at least in my career, that brought me to where I am today. It's even a Bollywood movie. It's a pretty deep movie and it's on Netflix. Okay, Peter said I'm a Bayesian, so there will be a Bayesian twist to this. So where did it all start? Where did the priors come from? No, that's the beginnings. You can see that's probably my only baby photo that exists. That's what my mom told me. I was born in Durgapur, West Bengal. That's a state in the east of India. There used to be in East Bengal and the West Bengal. I was born in 76 and my grandparents used to live there. That's where I get my Bengali mutation, at least some of it from there. My family origins are in south of India, hence my long name. It's sort of a mix of two states down south in Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh. So my roots go back to Andhra Pradesh, but most of my family migrated long back to south of India. I grew up in a maybe mid-sized town called Lucknow, which is in north of India, right around here. And it's a sleepy mid-sized town. And I think it's one of its claims to fame is 4 hours from the White House. It used to be a cultural and artistic hub back in the day. That's the current version of the house that I grew up in. We didn't have the first floor. Yeah, that's the house. And so my family consists of my immediate family as my mom, my dad, and my brother right here. So my mom was a high school teacher. And the is comes from the fact that she teaches my son, who's now in high school, so which is in maths, which is my high school teacher. She grew up all over India. Her dad, my grandpa, was in the army, so she had a rich cultural upbringing across India. I was thinking very hard what adjectives to add to a mom, and these are some of them that I came up with. She was a very talented person, was very artistic. And she's both an optimist and a worrier, as mom said. She's worried about a lot of things in this AI. And she was very patient because me and my brother used to drive her up the wall, literally many times. And my wife we have 2 boys, so I can sympathize with her. So the first point of luck was she taught me math in class in 9th and 10th grade, exactly like this. And so she was in the same school. We all used to go to school together. So my dad was a lawyer and pretty much a self-made man, and someone who throughout his life is deeply ethical, very honest, very principled and spiritual, and lived by the mantra of give respect and take respect, and sort of imbibe that in me. So hopefully some of that percolated in me now, and that's us at Padma ages ago. So my brother, I have a younger brother who's around 2.5 years younger than me. He's an aerospace engineer, works for the auto industry, driverless cars. He lives in West Bloomfield, which is around 40 miles towards Detroit. That's one of the reasons I moved to UM, among a host of other reasons. They'll come to. We used to fight a lot as kids, and now we are very tight. We are up against each other all the time. And both of us have a weakness for fruits and samosas, and that's the best approximation I found in Ann Arbor. So we're pretty close-knit, nuclear and a simple middle-class family. And one thing, as I was putting to his talk, is a lot of our thinking and upbringing, because we had two working parents, and we saw them how to juggle the household, and my dad used to cook a lot. So a lot of that way of life, trickled into me and both of us actually. Right. So schooling, my initial schooling, prep would be, for the Indians in the audience, we used to call it prep, and here I think it's kindergarten. Kindergarten to 10th grade was in a convent school run by nuns. So those are two of my teachers. Sister Lucilla, used to call it, and Sister Elsie, my 8th grade and 10th grade teachers. They were very, very strict in discipline. And etiquette was very important in the school. And that's where they used to drill into us. They used to actually turn us back to go home if we had good issues or anything was out of order. We actually had more. That's a photo of I think it's my 9th or 10th grade, I forget. And we had, in school, had many more girls in the classes than boys. I was an above average student. I was not a top student. I was decent. I was good in math, of course. My mom taught me. So, and English. And we had a very strong emphasis on British English. It took me 3 to 4 years after I came to US to get rid of Z. I'm not almost 50 or general. So we used to do prose, poetry, drama right from 5th, 6th grade. And because we were teachers' sons, both me and my brother, we used to be very closely bought. So we have to be well behaved, at least in the compounds of the school. Then we can go and play outside. I did a few sports. I like to play a lot, and it was cricket, as you might have heard. I used to play cricket. I used to do shot put. Shot put and tug of war. I used to be a big kid. So they put me in tug of war. I used to be the last person to reach the whole group. Yeah, 1 or 2 times, not too many times. And I was also a Navy crew. There's a lot. So high school, we used to call them inter-college. I went to a all-boys school, my 11th and 12th grade. It's called college back then in India. And it was run by church fathers. It was a pretty old school, founded in 1885. And once you do 10th grade in India, you basically bifurcate. You have to make a decision whether you do math or biology. And of course, I naturally gravitated towards math. And also, it just seemed easier. And that actually you see here, that's actually my class. Here, and this bifurcate where we go. There was a cricket field here, so I used to come out and play. It was in the middle of the city, like a downtown, and was surrounded by restaurants and movie theaters. And I was thinking back, for the 90s kid, it was a big deal. We didn't have cell phones or internet or anything. So the release for us was going to these restaurants, the cheap ones, and then watching movies and pumpkin classes, like the boys are here, I should say. There was a lot of focus on getting into engineering. And most of the schools, at least, better schools used to have that focus. I don't know how many of you have been to a Catholic school. There's this concept of a prefect. You get to be a prefect, and all that means is you get to hoist a flag and you get a special coat crest to wear. I don't have a photo of mine at that time, so you get one. That's right. So college in India works very differently. You give an entrance exam. So you sit for an exam, it could be a national level exam or a state level exam. And it essentially determines your fate, what college you go, what you study. And there's a lot of prep and process that you go through. And then one of the institutes, the Indian Institute of Technology, they were the pinnacle that everybody wanted to get into them for tech and science. And they're really basically a feedback impact of the brain. We want Aditya here, enough and good exams and hopefully it's better now. So as luck has it, I barely scraped. This was 2387. So as you might imagine, I was so low in the totem pole. I had limited choices. I didn't get to choose. What I got, I was actually very lucky to get maths and computing at one. There were 5 campuses. So it was back to Bengal and back to my grandmother. She used to live very near. So that was one of the feeling points of me going to Kalku so that I can go to the lakes and visit where my grandfather was no more by then. Right. Okay. So that's a picture of IIT Kharagpur. It's a small engineering focused college. It's around 135 kilometers from Kolkata. It's a very small campus and around 2,000 students. And it was a secular campus. I put campus in quotes here because it was an actual campus. It had a big boundary wall. Everything was self-contained, even everything. Market and students, faculty, everybody used to stay on the campus. So, and with the security at the gate. So it's no inflow in traffic or anything inside it. And it had a pretty intense, and I say prescriptive coursework and choices. We used to do 20 credits, over 20, sometimes 25 credits a semester. It feels odd right now, but we used to go through that. And 7, 8 courses. So essentially taking classes almost 8 to 6 every day. And it's not fun. We had a lot of success stories, and the current Google CEO, I might have played cricket with him. We intersected a year. And when I was making these slides, it was a good CEO. I put an X and good for a different campus, but it's a lot of successful folks, other successful folks. It actually even has a Netflix documentary based on it, called Alma Matters. And, it's funny that the place where it stopped and I took a picture, it says, why will they study? It changed my life. It singularly changed my life. And it was actually not the education. I thought about it. It was not so much the education, it was the ambiance. And because it was a microcosm of its own, because everybody was pretty much into each other, because it was a campus, the students were mostly campus bound. And because it pulled so many different students all over India, I had a very immensely smooth peers. And that side of the bottom line to get to this, like being surrounded by immensely smooth peers just raises your level. And just imbibing that, even though I was just over the cusp of being a student. I did some studying, but a lot of extracurriculars. Then cricket comes in. I did play uni-level cricket for IIT, and I was a field hockey goalkeeper. And I had to put through because hockey in India is always played on grass. And I used to, I was not so good. I used to get hit a lot. I used to do quiz and of course jump shots, and we used to have inter-dom competitions with jump shots. And that's a picture of me after a cricket match. I don't know if you can see me. I was a bit goofy in those days. Here and then somewhere here. Cricket match. So what did I end up studying? I studied maths and computing, and it was an integrated program, both a 3-year bachelor's plus a 2 years master's. And I took many math and programming courses, and I really like programming. And wrote lots of code, and so you might not even heard about it. A language called Prolog. It's very nasty type of programming language, very, very logic-based, Fortran. And I couldn't get it. We didn't do C++, and I could use some baby version of C. So I just put C minus. No. I didn't like your math as much. I came to analysis course. It didn't just appeal to me for some reason, but I got by. But in my last but 1 year, I took an economics elective. And somehow that resonated with me. And I really liked it. Just maybe the teacher was really good, and the materials in that. So I decided I'll leave after 4 years. And part of the decision was also that I will for art graduates after 4 years. And so I didn't complete my master's. And so I made a decision. So I had an average GPA, but I landed up somehow with a pretty good GRE. So in those days, it used to be greater for 2,400. So I applied, to grad schools, and I applied in economics in a lot of hope. And statistics actually as backup. I didn't really feel that. And they said, oh, statistics is a good thing. Go and do statistics. So I ended up saying, okay, let me try. And as it happens, with one elective in economics, you don't get too far. So I did get a few offers, but no funding. So I ended up, I got an offer from Texas A&M. And it was really nice because two of my close buddies were going there. It was really nice. So we all got our visas and everything. We were set to go. But then they withdrew my acceptance. And this was late. Actually, we didn't get our visas. We got everything. We were setting ready to go. Because I had a 3 years bachelor's plus a 1 year half master's. So they didn't think it was a full 4-year degree. And the graduate school at that point decided that to withdraw. I said, okay, so I wrote back to University of Rochester. And that's actually in Rochester in my first ski trip. So they had offered me a full scholarship. So I wrote back to them and they had the spot open. So I went to University of Rochester Biostatistics, which is in upstate New York. I actually started pretty much ground zero in probability and statistics. I like it. I might not even know what Gaussian distribution was. And really, really amazing teachers. And I could see coming from system where you take 7, 8 courses, coming to a system where you take 2 to 3 courses or maybe 4 courses, and seeing the amount of effort professors put into that teaching, that really invigorated me. That I still had the juices to go through the coursework and learn a lot. It was a pretty small department back then. It has grown a lot. So 22 years ago, it had a 1-year master's leading on to a PhD. It was going to do a PhD. We were a cohort of only 3. And that's actually one of my cohort mates, Sam. We dropped out after a semester, so we just 2 of us. I think 2 of us taking core courses. One of the professors decided that he's going to do a course, on one of the tallest buildings in Rochester, overlooking the whole thing. And even to yawn, it was a hard thing because it was right in front of her. I used to pretend I'm tying my shoelaces. I would go down, yawn, and then come back. We can too good for comfort. So I finished my master's and I reapplied to A&M. And part of the reason being it was a small cohort, but also my buddies were there and they were having a good time. So I reapplied, and as luck has it, they renewed my offer. They said, okay, you can come down. So I packed my bags and left Rochester and moved down south to Texas. Okay. And Texas A&M, it's very similar in many respects to Michigan. It's a big school. It's actually one of the largest schools. It has a really large enrollment, 65,000 students, 50,000 undergrads and grads. It's a similar scale. The College Station is very similar to, at least in footprint, very different culture. It used to be a predominantly military school, involved culture. Students used to be called Aggies. The stats department, it was one of the largest in US and might be still. It has a large number of faculty. The nice thing was we had, folks working both in force statistics and biostatistics. And it was sort of a combined department. So that was really useful for me as a student because I could take many, many courses, theory, applied, and computational. That there was a rich palette of courses to choose from. I took class from a time series class when I came in because I had a master's. I could take at least some advanced level courses. So I signed up with a course with Manny Parson, late Manny Parson. I don't know how many of you know, she's the developer of the Parson kernel, innovators kernels here. And, it might have been perhaps his last class. a brutal class. It used to start at 7 in the morning. And at that point, graduate students, nocturnal graduate students like me. Bit of a pain. Learned a lot. Two of my instructors were Naishin Wong and Taiwan Singh, who are actually in Michigan Statistics now across the road. And I did biostatistics from Naishin and probability from Taiwan. So when I moved to Michigan, I actually moved to stats than biostats. And Naishin was on my committee as well. I took a course on stat consulting from one of my professors called Mike Longnecker. It's like a 699 type course, not exactly. And he was an amazing instructor, one of the best instructors I've ever. I still actually have his notes and still periodically go back to it. It was one of the best and the most useful courses to me on a very practical level. You know, how to learn models and how to apply them to do the analysis. And best instructors I've come across. Right. So I had, so I went to A&M. I got an RA, which eventually turned into a PhD. So my next love point was I got to work with Ray Carroll and Bunny Malik. I had no idea who they were when I got to A&M. Google came about in 1998, and this was 2000. So I had no about any idea about the stature of Ray Carroll and about Bunny Malik, and Ray is one of the giants in the field. They were really outstanding, brilliant, and caring mentors. And they were chalk and cheese in many respects. It was nice to have two advisors being co-advised. As some of you know here, by Ray, he was an expert in many things. He has made fundamental contributions to semi-parametrics, nutrition, cancer. And one thing with Ray was he was very organized, super organized, and I would write out all the math and go through it, and he could diagnose with precision. If I had missed something, and he could say, "Go check your code. You might have gotten this wrong." That was wonderful. But I'm still amazed. He was intimidating, intelligent. Bonnie, I don't know how to describe him, but just Bayesianism and MCMC flowed from him. He could tell you how to do MCMC. And my average meetings, Bonnie, it lasted less than 5 minutes, my one-to-one. You're trying this, go change this variable. Sometimes it used to So, but both had a profound influence on me. They gave me a lot of guidance and freedom. And the way, the style of that mentoring was so nice to give enough, freedom for me to fight it out, but at the same time, they knew exactly the points where I needed guidance. And I remember writing my first paper and sending it to Ray, and I wrote this thing on, everything in Bayesian, this is the best way to do it. And Ray wrote back to me, "You must be smoking something to write that in a paper." There are better ways to put it. So my dissertation was broadly on Bayesian bioinformatics. I was part of a training program, was not funded by a training program, but there was a training program in bioinformatics. And it had elements of semi-parametric smoothing, nonlinear smoothing, spatial functional data, gene expression, microarrays, which were just coming along. In those days, it was a hot thing back in early 2000s, and it did some cell imaging in cancer. And that's me actually with my first laptop, which had 512 MB of RAM. I bought it on a 2-year installment plan because I couldn't afford a laptop. So it was a big deal because in those days, if you had to do any coding, you had to go to the department and spend hours in the department. So when I got my laptop, I could sit at home and code. It was like, it was so relieving. So my first paper, actually, there's an interesting story here. It was a computational project on Bayesian adaptive splines. So essentially, you observe a bunch of points, and then how do you fit the best fitting code to that, and how do you make it spatially adaptive? If it includes both if it's smooth and non-smooth, it's an animation that Bruce Buckley, a former postdoc, he did a variation based on it. No. So, anyways, it was My project was just 20% deriving the math on that, but 80% of that coding. As some of my students can attest, 90% of that is debugging. Computing. And I spent maybe a year and a half into it, and all I got was a small MSA improvement over existing methods. It was like 0.01 or 0.1 or something like that. So I didn't think it was publishable. So I just said, yeah, I've done this project, here it is. I wrote up something. Ray and Bunny said, oh, that's great, let's submit it. It's like, really? No. So I submitted it to JCGS. And the first review was very harsh. And when I got the email, I remember I was literally in tears, and I took it personally. So one of the reviewers, my name, the famous statistician, unblinded themselves and wanted a comparison and wanted my codes and everything to compare to their method. And anyways, the whole back and forth, anyways, it did get published. Just got close to 100 citations now, not a lot, but at least some people built up on it. So I learned two things from there. One is any contribution is a contribution. It's nice to put it out there. And it shaped my philosophy as AE for journals. And now that AE for a few journals, how it impacts someone as a first paper or a dissertation paper, and how to be gentle. At the same time, giving constructive criticism, how to do that. And now that I think back, my experience has shaped that. Hopefully, it's helpful to some. Let's see. So I got into cancer research pretty early. I got to work with the Cancer Focus Lab as a GSRA. And it was led by Joanne Lupton and Nancy Turner. They used to work on diet and colon cancer, and I learned a lot from them about about being an interdisciplinary researcher in the biology of cancer. So Joanne Lupton, if you don't know, if you see the FDA labels, she was on the committee that worked on that. But again, if you, I think she was the person who was responsible for converting their, if you pick up a chocolate, it tells you 100 calories, but but that's like there are 8 servings in that. So put the calorie content for the whole thing rather than by serving in some of the things. She fought for that. I actually used to be a fly on the wall at the lab meetings. I had no idea what they were talking about. And when they were discussing biology and doing the presentation, I used to attend the lab meetings regularly. But I love those interactions now that I see it, even though it felt like a waste of time. It actually, just hearing them speak and getting the words, somehow percolated in me. It actually seeded 2 chapters of my dissertation. And one of them was a very cool project that I worked on modeling diet effects of colon cancer. And this particular, I'll tell you briefly, it was a really cool structured data where this is a colon, you have an aberrant colon, these are mice models. And you get these nice, these structures, what are called crypts, not nice, but not in the cancer context, but these crypts. And this postdoc, Li Yang Hong, we laboriously used to go and count all these cells up, and measure the distance within the crypts. And that's from the imaging data. And she spent scores of hours doing that. So it had actually a really nice structure in terms of having diets nested within treatments and having a spatial organization. So as this data she was collecting, and as I was sitting in the lab meetings, actually, I could see a lot of potential in this data and modeling this spatial relationship between these cancer biomarkers, apoptosis and P27, there are some cancer biomarkers and how do they interplay. And I guess that's where my love for complex data grew. Now, just noticing structure in this data, like which people will just sum it up, but modeling this as a function of where the cell is in the crypt. So that became a functional data. And then now you have spatial, these crypts are along the full point. So that's a spatial architecture. So it sort of became spatial functional data analysis. And one of my chapters actually ended up being an editor's invited paper in biometrics. That was a big deal for me at that point, when it went through, and really cool stuff. And I also, there was a few other papers from a biological perspective. So the biggest learn right? My wife will kill me for this, but the biggest actually it's a lucky break, is I met my wife, my future wife at that point, who was doing her PhD in architecture. This might have been 2 or 3 years into the PhD. Once you get that mode in graduate school where you have no classes and you don't know how time passes. I think for me, when my classes left, I went to play volleyball and watching a movie a day. And as luck has it, I met her. She's an outrageously smart and talented researcher. That's her. Yeah, she has a magazine cover. As it turns out, my luck, compared to her luck, she met me after her stats class, and she took it with my advisor. And I used to tutor a lot in statistics, and that was my testimony. So we dated for around 2 months, and we mostly talked research. And we promised each other that we'll proofread each other's dissertations. Bad deal for me. I had to read her 250 pages of dissertation, all text. Then my 100+ pages of dissertation, which was interspersed with multiple equations, so she didn't have to do much. So what did I feed off her? Like, as I said, surrounding myself with people, like just fed off her. Rupali was someone who, she had a very infectious enthusiasm for research, just likes research. I've met very few people who just want to do research. And writing and speaking skills and just observing and still do. She proofreads a lot of things that I do, and just observing her speak and putting together the slides. She didn't pass the slides better. So we got married in 2005. No, at a big Indian wedding. You can see me there, it's like grinning, from side to side. So we were from two different cultures. So we had 4 weddings. We had, she's from Orissa, which is east of India, and I'm from South. So we had a Orissa style wedding, the South Indian style wedding. We had a 4th marriage in India, and then we come here, and then we were filing our taxes and realized that that wedding is not accepted. So if I had to quote my wife, I don't know if we are happily married, but we are thoroughly married. So, all right. So I was waltzing around in the PhD doing fun stuff, but I was thinking about, or even sure about academia. I like research. I just like being a graduate student. I just like the pace at which you do, and coding in pajamas and watching TV. I had a lot of self-doubts. And I think my office was right across Naishin Wang and Veera. They were superstar researchers. And I used to leave my office at like midnight, and they were still there. And I used to waltz back in at 11, 12 in the morning. They were still there. This is what you need to do. So I had a lot of self-doubt. So I was thinking I'll probably go to I like research. So I said maybe industry or national labs like NAG or AT&T in this part. And academia was nowhere in my radar. So I went there. I had actually not a deep conversation. Actually, it was a short conversation with Ray and and bottom line, Ray said, I can see it totally out. Okay. And he said, yeah, if you like research, go for it. It's like, really? And I came out and I said, okay, if they think, I'll try. I was purely with that. And then Pani also encouraged me. Her father was an academic. He was a professor. That's why I passed the muster to get married to her. So, and that's actually me suiting up for my defense, by the way. Did the suit to my defense was my first car. And that's us at our graduation. And that's my father-in-law, my late father-in-law, who was a professor, and she knew the academic life, so she sort of brought me and said, yeah, let's give it a shot. So I went into the market, right? I entered the market in academia. It's a very set process. So I entered the market with one paper, just one published paper and 2 drafts. Nowadays, compared to some of the candidates here, I wouldn't even take a job. Not in an interview, you will have a job. So those days you didn't need a postdoc, you could go directly from grad school to the faculty positions. I sent out tons of applications. I all snail mail. There were very few electronic applications. So you have to put it in an envelope, print it out, make sure that you're applying, you have the right cover letter to the right. How many of you have done that? Because I had no idea where I stood at one paper, two drafts. I had no idea. I'm coming from mid-level school, Texas A&M, and also there was the two body, and somehow we didn't want to stay in Texas. We said, okay, let's move some other place and get a different perspective. So I prepared really, really hard for interviews, and that's where my advisors and major professors were a major help. They helped me a lot. How the process works, especially Ray. And I've given a couple of talks on it in the department about academic job. So somehow I ended up with 13, 14 interviews. And the nice thing about that is I got an airline by the end of it. By some quirk of fate, I actually got offers from pretty much all. And I purely attribute that to advisors' letters. So my MD Anderson, but I eventually ran out, was my last interview. It was late March. That was my worst interview by me. I worked really hard on it because MD Anderson was a place that was in my radar, and I couldn't finish my talk. I couldn't even get to the best part of my talk. And MD Anderson had a reputation at that point. They used to stop the speakers and ask a lot of questions, sort of interaction and engagement, but I never managed to finish my talk. And then Peter Thal walked up to me and said, that's the issue with your priors. Peter Thal is a famous biostatistician who works on Bayesian biostatistician who works on clinical trials. But as luck has it, I did get an offer, and from MD Anderson. And I actually saved my first ever colloquium notice. So that was my first ever colloquium. Anyways, so I'm MD Anderson. So I chose MD Anderson for multiple reasons. I was doing cancer research, so it seemed a natural fit. It was actually a very new department. It was not an established department at that point. It was a very new department set up by Don Berry. Yes, me and Don much later. So Don had come in and revamped a lot of things in there. And it had a great conglomeration of Bayesian statisticians at that point. With a very good model that I feel now in retrospect for a medical center biostat department. You get a lot of protected time initially, and then you get phased into because it played really well. That's the general at that point, and a very generous start. And more importantly, I could sense a vibe there. There was a vibe there when I walked in and talked to people, vibe there. So even though we didn't want to stay in Texas, we said, okay, now we moved 90 miles south, not too far. I think the biggest thing we ever moved was microwave. So we moved 90 miles south to Houston. And I said to myself, yeah, it's there are a lot of successful big people there. Tenure doesn't work out, I'll move to industry. I was okay with that. I said, worst case, if I hate statistics, I'm just going to move to that. So then we went to MD, then we moved to Houston, went to MD Anderson. It was actually a great place for junior faculty. And just the interactions with faculty, it was common to have lunch, coffee on a daily basis, essentially, with faculty, students, postdocs, and because it was a smaller department. I got a lot of thinking, reading time in the initial years. And the byproduct was I wasn't really productive initially, but I feel that the time I spent, I used to read a lot. And it served me in the long run, just getting the lay of the land, especially I came from from a student to a faculty, so I had to diversify my research, I had to advise students. So I had to get up to speed. So I spent a lot of time, doing that. I was encouraged to do deep application-driven methodological research, and that was a level of encouragement that percolated through everyone in the department. Actually, sometimes faculty meetings were scientifically themed. I remember a couple of times when Don used to call faculty meetings, we're going to talk about surrogate markers. I had no idea what it meant, and I just imbibing that. And I learned a lot because it's a medical center biostat clinic, hospital setting. I learned a lot about being a collaborative biostatistician, working with physicians, scientists, and researchers. And most importantly, the senior faculty were very, very generous with their time, advice and feedback. And here are some of them who used to interact a lot. Peter Mueller, he's actually one of the reasons I've chosen the embassy. Top-notch guy, very nice person. Dal Johnson, Gary Rosner, Jeff Morris, Peter Thorpe, Kim Montel. And not many people know him. This is Nevi Bakala, one of the most brilliant minds I've met in my career. And he's heading up somewhere in Guinea. He's left academia, but absolutely brilliant. Just he's right next to my office, and it was wonderful interacting with him. So just being surrounded by these people and interacting them so much, it gave a sense of community, but at the same time, and I could just ask them questions, however stupid they might be, and they used to be nice. And right. What am I doing on time? All right. So early years, when I was there, I started collaborating with a chap called Jeff Morris. Right, that's me and Jeff 10 years ago. And as luck has it, we had the same advisor. I actually took his seat in Texas A&M. And we're doing similar things. We're working on complex structured data, functional data analysis, and genomics problems. And Jeff and I, it was sort of like a perfect marriage because we were doing similar things. We have very similar mentoring philosophies, and and something that I learned from him is how to do deep ethical research and publishing, and that's something that Jeff deeply believes in, and I sort of working with him, how to just kickstart research projects, how to see them to the fruition, and how to think about it. And one example is our first paper together. As I said, I was not really being productive. My first, I didn't have any paper in my first year. And I wrote up this paper and I said, yeah, Jeff, let's just submit it. I want to get this published because I want to show something to Don in my annual review. So no, that's good work. Why don't you try a higher level journal? Try JASA. I said, really? So that's JASA level? He said, yeah, let's try it. And then I ended up submitting and it went through this time it went through like a breeze. So we have co-advised 6 students and postdocs and published 16 papers and still counting. So I got into cancer genomics primarily due to 2 individuals, Keith Bagley and Kevin Coombs. As I said, I had some time, so I just waltzed into their offices. He said, do you have time to work? I said, yeah, I do. What do you want to work on? He said, yeah, I want to work, some complex structured data integration. And then he introduced me to the DCGA project. And that got me started into data integration. And then Kevin introduced me to proteomics. That got started me into graphical models. And my face literally was like this. Like somebody had woken up the baby and said, oh, all these possibilities. And they was in some sense the perfect collaborators for me, because they both had a deep knowledge of the biology and the data and the context as well as the data. And they both are very big on forensic bioinformatics. So they do a deep dive into the data. And what I really enjoyed with them was the quantification of the scientific hypothesis into statistics. And I could do the modeling on top of that and carry on. So, and these 2 actually ended up being my research direction till date for working on data integration and graphical models. And it was 2 chance conversations. One afternoon they were in the office and I just walked into them and started chatting with them. They were not in our department, they were in a sister department called bioinformatics at the point. Very, very smart individuals. I worked on a lot of cancer collaborations, with a lot of cancer researchers, mostly in myeloma. This is Bob Orlowski and oh gosh, I'm blanking on the name. He was a lung cancer surgeon. A lot of folks, I used to support a lot of cancer researchers in myeloma, lymphoma, colon, lung cancer. I got into systems biology and genomics primarily due to this individual called Gordon Mills, who's sort of the inventor of one of the proteomic technologies, or PPA. Got lots of collaborative papers. And essentially, I got academically, now I can't put it in a better way, I got academically married to some of these groups. I learned a lot about the science on the job, reading up about them, attending lab meetings, and just imbibing from them. Jack Rock. There's Gordon Mills, Han Liang, and Veera Baladandayuthapani collaborated heavily. So I got involved in many large-scale projects through these individuals, course and everything. I was also in a couple of meetings with Jim Allison. Jim Allison, for those of you who don't know, he won the Nobel Prize later. I was in an in-person meeting with him, and I think I left MD Anderson in July and won the Nobel Prize whenever they announced in August. So I could never grab a selfie with him. He's one of the world leaders in immunology, immunotherapy. So my first grant, I actually had a lot of inertia writing that. Somehow, I didn't write one until my fourth year. I don't know what it is, like just putting it all together and packaging and selling it. And so I had to write one out of the department. So I said, okay, so I'll start writing one. So I just, cornered myself and said, okay, I'll write 6 to 9 months ahead of the deadline. And I finished like 1 month before the deadline. I sent it to all my collaborators, mentors, and can you give me your input? Do you think this is fundamental research? And as it happens, we got a really good score on the first submission. And I checked the scores. In those days, used to just go in and check the scores. I took a screenshot and I kept it in case they changed the score later. And so I wrote that and I called the program officer. Are you sure? He said, yeah, you got an 8%. I said, okay, great. It did get funded. I still don't know if I hate anything more or not writing. So kids, like along the journey, we had 2 boys, Arit and Ayush, sitting at the back there. One of them is playing a video game now. Wanted a geeky name. Another one, Ayush is my younger one. I wanted to name him Jomit. I can argue with anyone except a woman in labor, but so he's Ayush. I was actually born on the my mid-tenure review meetings. I could call it down and tell him I'm not coming. One thing they did was they changed my perspective in many ways. A lot came from your kids and your time is divided, is getting work-life balance into your lives. And I used to be a nocturnal person, used to work at nights, but then I became a morning person. One key thing is they help me calibrate my ambition, like how much can I do and I cannot do. And I think now retrospectively thinking, I think that was one of the biggest perspective that they changed for me. And they're hopefully good in math. They're doing well. That's one of the better pictures here. So 2011 was a big year. India won the Cricket World Cup. So that's an iconic moment where Indian captain hits a 6 and makes the World Cup. That's called a 6, it's a home run. Yeah, I also got tenure. So yeah, I got tenure, so I got to travel a bit now. So these are 4 places. I don't know how many of the places you can recognize. And also the folks. Some of them are being here in Michigan. So any takers? Johnson is here. That's okay. I'll give the names. That's cute too. Peter and I playing hooky in a conference, driving around Iceland. That's still a big state for the sun. I think this is Steve Chin. He used to be here. as well. When you want, see, it's definitely not easy to just. We also travel with family, places, nice places, Florence, Rome. Did I get that right, Jeremy? I watch cricket, right? Try to swing in a couple of games. There's the World Cup in 2019 before COVID hit. I watched a Ashes Test match. It's been nicely the timing worked out. Also co-wrote a book along the way. I was pretty dated book by now. Part of this became part of my dissertation, Bonnie said, let's write a book. I don't think it sounds me. All right. So a posterior life. So post-tenure life. For me, post-tenure life is like somebody hits a cruise control. It's like, it's a cruise control. You know what you're doing, a few years down the line. And then I became a full professor in 2017. I've got a few papers, grants, a few honors along the way. You start reading for journals, editorial boards. And so I started getting taste of scientific leadership, sports. There was a moonshot program at MD Anderson. You get more committee work to do. Once you're promoted. The key thing is I got to work with very talented junior faculty. Here are some of the junior faculty I had the privilege of working with. Francesco Stengo, Brian Hobbs, who worked at MD Anderson, and India, Sebastian Karthik. We were in different institutions. This is Arvind, who's here in bioinformatics, and Richard Ha and Christine Peterson. And I learned a lot from them. Just interacting with them, advising students and trainees. It was one of the best things to have happen. So I went to Michigan. Okay. So I was chairing, I just very distinctly remember this. I was chairing a faculty search, Jeremy email. I was actually at a candidate seminar. You know how that email pops up in your then you gave position at UM. Now that actually got something thinking. And I knew it had a strong biostat department. I knew a few folks, strong students. I had a few colleagues who were from Michigan. So I said, yeah, I'm not for an interview. I interviewed actually twice. Here came out 2 visits and got an offer. Luckily got an offer from here. And I was very comfortable in MD Anderson. Very comfortable. So mid-career move isn't that easy. I want to call out 2 individuals, of course, Jeremy and Bromar. That's actually me and Bromar a couple of weeks ago. I was in Cambridge for a meeting. And I ran into her. We were grabbing a pin, one of the drinks, and that's actually the seed where Francis Watson Crick and discovered the DNA. Eagle Bob. That's right. That's Eagle Bob. So Bromar and Jeremy were very instrumental. They were my sounding boards at that point as I was making the decision, and really thank them for helping me navigate through the process. And of course there was 2 careers and kids. Luckily we probably got an offer from architecture, and for the kids, we still remember. We said, okay, we're gonna go to Ann Arbor in March and live for a week. And make them see snow. And that's actually them 4 years ago. And you can see this photograph is right outside Graduate Inn. And I said, okay, stand there, so whatever time you feel this is what life's going to be. And I also wanted to break my comfort zone. So, and most importantly, I felt really good vibe. And I came here, met faculty and students as part of the interview. I felt a great vibe. So we packed our bags, we moved in for 2018. And we said our goodbyes at MD Anderson for a couple of lunches now. And let's see if we can get any of the folks, a lot of Michigan folks here, Michigan graduates. Being one, Shulin on, and Nabiha, who's another student. Jeff saw this on all of these. So we said our goodbyes and then moved here. And in retrospect, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, professionally and personally. What I did have was an 8-mile hike. Remember that? When you were at JSM.
It turns out to be much harder than it
And Vancouver. I knew like 2025 started the hike and only the 2 of us were faculty and there were the other 2 more students. I'm actually spent out by the time, but.
we had beer afterwards.
Did travel here afterwards. So this is the initiation to Michigan, so. There was a new dean and a new chair after I signed, so this is the boy Brahmar and me at the same JSM. So we were all, and then the boy was coming here, so. Kids love Ann Arbor. Now you got to be near family. Now you got a bigger house. Less driving, now more teaching, more academic, great colleagues, wonderful staff, awesome students. I could go on and on. That's leave it for another day, and it's been a great place. It's been a very fun ride so far. I got to take over the cancer data sciences group, filling in some big shoes, journey shoes, literally and metaphorically. And working with the fabulous staff, in the cancer data science group, working with the cancer center and Laura, our program assistant. It's been a bit of a trial by fire. As soon as I took it over, COVID hit. So there was stumbling blocks along the way, but love the interactions. And the cancer center is going through a renewal this year, so it's a big year for the cancer center as well. And interact with the leadership as well, and get to know the landscape of research. So I'm still getting to do the same things I did, just maybe at an epsilon notch. I got the Mid Award and I put it here among the many honors because it sort of came at the right time. In your mid-level career, and you're thinking, oh, is my work valuable? Does anybody care? Is it making an impact? And I think this, at that point in time, and I was 42, I think, you want answers for everything. Right? And it came in and it really reinforced, like, okay, someone cares, or a few people care at least. That's the Mid Award, and the dinner. Yeah, Jeff is there. Brent Cool, who else? Garrett Fitzmaurice, Brianna Stickinson. But then what made all of this really worthwhile? I should tear up here. That is the students. It's my singular honor working with so many stellar students back in the day, and also 5 of them here in Michigan. It's been a truly honor and a privilege to work with such talented students, and something that's why I love this job. That's Lin Zhang and Maria there. Makes me feel old with it. Granddaughter as a colleague. Academic granddaughter. And of course, the postdocs, folks who chose to work with me and further their careers, over the years, here and watching them be successful in what they do. Finally, the community. What I came into. So this is the 651 finals. The 651. I got a picture. That's actually a visit to Chengdu with Jian. William is there, Brahma is there. I've never eaten more spicy food. Jian kept going with the hot dogs. That's Diwali in our house. You can see Raghu, Geeta, Brahmar, Snigdha, Rosmi. This picture, I realized I didn't have a picture of the cancer data science group, so I took one day before yesterday. I scripted them to take a picture of that. Discussing clinical trial research. All right, it's my last slide. So I was told very early on, a good way To judge how well you're doing is to measure the quality of people whom you interact with. By that criteria, I couldn't have asked for more. Thank you for indulging me. I'm actually new. And I'm at a place called the Edge of the World in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This last week. A week ago, last week. Fantastic place.
Thank you, Veera, for this wonderful talk and see 12 lot priors, almost probably postures, but I also noticed that Jeff Wilson has been appeared multiple times your photos. Probably, echoing your last comment, you worked with great guys in your career. And so it's wonderful to see that. So on behalf of the department, I want to present this certificate and in appreciation of your contribution to Biostat, sharing your journey with us. Thank you so much. So as part of a tradition of the journey talk, we'll invite various students and trainees come in the front to share their experience with their work or their life here in the department and university.
I'll start.
Let's go. There's
Hope all of you can hear me. So yeah, I am Rupam. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate in the department, and I have been working with Veera since he has been here and I have been here. We joined in the same semester. So my knowing Veera started in a funny and kind of surprising way, because when I applied to this department in 2017, end of 2017, he was not here at that point. So I went through the department like faculty level for a while. I wrote down my SOP. I listed a few faculties like, these are the people that I'm interested in. These are the people that I probably want to work with. And then I think in February 2018, I got the offer. I think Moshumi was the one who called me to let me know that I'm going to get an offer letter soon. Like, I think I got it like, it was on Valentine's Day, if I remember correctly. After that, like, there was the usual thing, like, do you want to do an RA or TA? You fill up this Google form, you go through the whole process. So then one evening, I was at my grandmother's house, I'm sleeping, and I wake up from sleep, I look at an email, I think it was from Nicole, and it said, you have been matched to someone for an RA position. And then I see the name is like Professor Baladandayuthapani. And the first thing that hit my memory at that point is like, wait, I haven't heard this name. So how bad a job did I do when I was writing my essay? Website 5 times over, listed all these people, and I have never for a single time came across this name. So obviously I was angry with myself for a few minutes. And then I started Googling, like, this is not 2000, so Google was there. So I started Googling, and then I became happier over the moments because I came to know that, okay, this person is not here yet. So then I kind of figured, like, I guessed from there, okay, probably he's moving. So I left an email for him. He was in the process of moving as well. So he took like more than a week responding to it. And so over that week, I was like, yeah, was it a good decision? Like, should I have emailed later or something? And then eventually he replied and he was like, oh, yeah, sure. I am moving as well. And I am coming there in the beginning of September. Here's my phone number. Here's everything. Please contact me when you get here and all of that. So then I came here in August and he was not here at that point. So I came to Ann Arbor before him when we moved. And then, yeah, I think from then, I think the first meeting we had was not in an office or anything. It was in the cafe that used to be here. And the first thing that we did together was figuring out how to take the bus and go back, because we were kind of on the same bus route at that point, in the same side of the town. And I don't think I have to describe to any of you, those of you who have been in this department for a while at least, what kind of a person he is, not just from the academic standpoint, but in general. And if there's one thing that I want to learn from him is how responsible he is in everything that he does. To his students, trainees, to his family, kids, wife, everything, to his work and also the life outside work. How meticulously he plans everything. Like, okay, this is the time I spend for this is the time I contribute for this purpose. This is how I manage multiple things in a single day. And I still don't have that in my life. But if at some point I go into an academic career, I think that's what I want to have from him. And to me personally, I mean, not just an advisor, but he has been a friend in every true sense. I could share anything with him over the last 4 years, any kind of issues that I ran into, any kind of problems where I need solution with in whatever aspect of life I could talk about. So yeah, I think I don't have enough words. I could go on for long. I could go on probably for months describing this. But yeah, I think I won't be very wrong if I say that on behalf of the entire department, probably it's a privilege to have someone like Veera among us. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else wants to share something?
Sorry, I actually have a flu like earlier this week, so forgive me if I wear a mask. Okay, so I'm Dong Hong. I actually working with Veera, I think is after he moved to Ann Arbor a semester after, and I like his first GSI, and I'm working with him for 651. So if any one of you is taking my 651, so yeah. And so the first image of me like meeting Veera is like at that time I'm actually switching my advisor from genetics group to something not genetics. So at that time I write to Veera saying that I want to work with some more theoretical aspect of my dissertation. And at a time point, Veera told me, no, I'm not the one who is doing anything theoretical. And at that time point, I was actually a little bit surprised because I said, okay, I thought Veera's from State Department, so I think he should be the one really doing the theoretical aspect. But he told me, no, he's actually doing much more. He described himself much more like a modelist. And at that time point, I actually have really like subtle idea. I have no idea like what is the theoretical and modelist like at a time point. But right now, I think, yeah, that is a really clever description for yourself. Yeah, I totally agree with Veera. He's a really good modelist. And I think at a certain time point, Veera just told all of us like, focus on your data and the model first, and then those theory just the slice of your paper. And that is really important for me. Like at the beginning, we all start with like theories and then maths and really intrigued with some math proving. But Veera just took it an opposite way around. So it's really interesting. And I think it's a really good way for me to learn how to survive and bounce that. And also another interesting fact about Veera is like, you probably don't know because we went to ISPA, me and Rupam, and at that time point, you are actually quite famous. ISPA PhD people, like they first asked me, so who are you working with? I told him Veera. The most interesting part is, oh, Veera? I thought he's doing the model selection, not BNP. Why are you like in the BNP like seminars? Like it's interesting to see how people describe your advice of what they are doing. Yeah, but no kidding. That definitely, I think lots of people in ISPA definitely know your name, and yeah. And also, I also met to come up to some like poster sessions, and I saw actually their like work is pretty similar to Veera's work. Like they're using TCGA and non-parametric method and different non-parametric stuff, and then after we talk about it and finally found out, I think that is Francesca's students. So at the time I was like, oh shit, that's the reason why I'm so familiar with your job. And at the time we actually have our like Facebook and like WhatsApp. And it's like really interesting to see like each other, that our advisors like has like really connection here. And yeah, I think Rupam just told almost everything about Veera. And yeah, Veera is really good at like scheduling his like daily life, and then he has like every different chunk of the time, and every day, like every time Veera just asks me to plan ahead. If you have 30 minutes and write every 30 minutes, I still try to implement do that, like force myself to sit down, and then yeah, that's really helpful, I gotta say. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much like every aspect I can say about Veera. Yeah, but after all, I think Veera is really like most interesting thing about Veera is when I think we first time go to Veera's house, he has a like summer party or something, and then Upali asked us, just tell me everything about Veera, about like his mean or like really vicious to our like students, like just tell her. But I think at that time point, all of us are saying, no, he's a nice person, like he's a really nice mentor. So yeah, that's yeah.
Others from Veera's group want to share their experience or stories, and we still have 5 minutes to. So I don't know if any my colleagues want to share some interesting stories or experiences, and something. Please be good. If not, then we will end the journey talk, and thank you so much. I'll give another round. A lot of the good postures, and so hopefully you have more luck on your journey, and it's wonderful colleagues to have in the department. Thank you so much.
You're the chair, Peter, you control my luck.
Well, 40 days and